about 150 certificates in Bulgaria coming soon. Taiwan is still very strong for us. Korea is still very strong. And the smaller markets are fairly stable. Program-wise, the big exciting thing has been that we have got approval to audit against FSSC 22000. Now this won't affect many of you, but FSSC 22000 is an accepted program under the GFSI, which is the Global Food Safety Initiative. What that all means is the really big companies in the world have accepted GFSI programs and putting a lot of pressure on their clients to do the same. So you'll see, for instance, now that in packaging industries, they really need FSSC 22000 or a range of others, including BRC. So we're seeing that the packaging companies are coming first, and then I expect the manufacturers in Australia will follow. FSSC 22000 is a very expensive program, and the reason for that is because we pay fees to the foundation, which is the owner of the program in Europe, per client. Nevertheless, it's not a difficult program. It really is just ISO 22000 and the relevant prerequisite program, think of it in terms of the relevant GMP for that industry, which they should be complying with anyway. But it's a little bit more prescriptive, and so we see some of our packaging companies having to make some improvements to their facilities when before they can get certified. So FSSC 22000 is a new program for us. JLB have developed a training program for lead auditors for it, and presented that and conducted that training, and is conducting it in Vietnam in a couple of weeks' time. We've applied to the foundation for that training program to be accepted. At the moment, it's the only course being run in Australia. SR Global and I think it's SGS say that they do it in Australia, but in fact they don't when you contact them. They do it in other countries. So it could be a good spinner for us. And I expect that FSSC's 22000 will just gain popularity in Australia because of the very large client base, clients requiring it, and also that's despite Woolworths and Coles dragging their heels and wanting to have their own separate programs. What else has happened within Australia? We've been fairly stable, I guess, in the last 12 months. This last quarter, we've lost quite a few clients, or I should say certificates, but that's because there's been quite a lot of consolidation, where clients had 10 certificates, for instance, that some of them have made them into one certificate. But Australia is still quite strong and going reasonably well. Jazans still thinks reasonably highly of TQCSI. We're always they leave us to last many times when they are requiring CBs to do things because they just presume we do it. And they seem to have their hands cut out, or that's not the right thing to say, is it? I think they've got their hands full with a lot of CBs that aren't quite doing the right thing. And if you look at the Jazans website, you'll notice that there's been 4 or 5 CBs being withdrawn, their accreditation withdrawn in the last quarter or so. What else, Stuart? At head office, we have employed a business coordinator. Selena is her name, and she's helping with some of the projects, taking some of the weight off me and Lorraine to a certain respect, with developing new programs and so forth. We have pushed a new little program through, which is OHS and environmental management systems for companies that break up ships in Bangladesh, because of Bangladesh saw a lot of potential there. That won't affect us, I don't expect. We've gone down the process for ISO 27001 accreditation. All we're waiting for now is a client, so that JazANZ can see us auditing and certifying a client, and then we can get accreditation. And the other one that we are pursuing reasonably quickly now is 55001, which is asset management. Asset management, I think, will improve, will become stronger for us in Australia. The Victorian government, for instance, require it for various projects over a certain size, and I think it will just grow because of its origins in Australia with the government. And so we're essentially waiting for our first client, or second client now, to prove the process to JazANZ for accreditation. As I'm yapping on here for half an hour, I hope people haven't locked out. Can you still hear me?
I'll just check with everyone, Craig.
And while Stuart's checking, have anyone got any questions on the overview, where we're at, etc., as far as TQCSI is concerned?
I'd have to unmute everyone.
Sorry, mate.
Any questions there, guys?
Yeah, Craig, Nick Capabianco here. We're doing increasing numbers of audits with both Aurora Packaging and Visi. Is the FSSC 2200 applicable to their cartons and Visi board packaging companies?
Yeah, we originally were approved by the Foundation for food manufacturing and a few little things like that. We've added packaging onto it now. That means plastic, paper or steel packaging, and we have been approved for that process now. So we're actually, our clients that are coming along are plastic packaging, but paper packaging will come along as well, as long as it's food grade.
Okay.
The other thing to remember with FSSC certification is that there are particular restrictions, or that's not true, criteria required of auditors. It's not particularly onerous in the food manufacturing part, but in the packaging part it is, and you have to have done some tertiary studies. In fact, you have to have done a degree or a diploma in packaging. However, that can be got around by doing a shorter course through some of the packaging companies who belong to the International Association. So if anyone's in that field, if they contact me separately, I can put them on the right steer. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was quality trade. Now, everyone's looking at a screen, are they, Stuart?
Sharing both screens at the moment.
If we just bring up the TQCSI trading screen, what we've done, there was an email that's just been sent to you about in the last hour, so I don't expect any of you would have read it yet, but we've warned about this for some time. Basically, we've partnered, if you like, with this mob called Quality Trade, who are a business-to-business portal, but unlike every other business-to-business portal in the world, it's not based on the money or the fees that you pay. It's based on how good you are, and there's a number of criteria. But what does improve their score, if you like, significantly is if they are certified, and therefore Quality Trade have partnered also with JazANZ and certification bodies under the JazANZ accreditation will be invited to join this free. We're the pilot, if you like, and one of the reasons we're the pilot is because we already have the TQCSI trading website going, and we're in the groove, if you like, with it. So what we've done is we've changed our trading website. It was a little bit Mickey Mouse anyway, the search function. So I don't know, I can't quite see people can see, but Stuart, if you can just take us through the trading website for me.
Yep. So guys, if you go to obviously TQCSI's main page, you can click on TQCSI Trading, and that brings us to our trading page. So if we go through and search for a supplier, we select the country which you want to go on, which will select Australia. If you type in key product words, and it can be any industry, and we type, construction, it'll bring up a list of clients for us. So when we're looking at our list of clients, what we want ideally to see from all our clients, and this is where we rely on the auditors to get us some information if it's not actually there on the client detail sheet, is when we click on badge, we'll see their products and services come up here. So that's where it's all listed. Design, construction.
This is the quality website.
Now, this information is also available on our client details, so you can verify it and check it through our client details page. Just want to demonstrate what a client looks like when they haven't got it, which is best at. So as you can see, there's no products and services available there, and this will actually field will be empty on the client details. We need to get this information out of the clients. So this is where we're relying on the auditors to send that information in. Does it make sense, guys?
Just show them the compliance tab.
So this is the compliance tab on how they're rated.
Just select the plus sign on the right hand edge of the quality assurance. So that brings up that brings up the information about the quality certification there, and if they had environmental and health, safety, etc., do the same. So if you just go back up to the screen, up to the top, I mean, mate. Okay, so our process is that products and services and technologies used must be checked during our audits. You actually sign, or you tick a box in your audit reports to say that you've done that. But many companies have not had anything completed, and so those auditors have let their clients down, because now the company profile, it doesn't look anywhere near as good. The bottom line here is that when through TQCSI trading website, or just going straight into quality trade, those our clients can be identified. Our clients can now, we've now given them or quality trade, we're giving them a password in the next day or so, where they can now go in and they can put in their logos, and they can put in products and services and photos and all that sort of stuff in a much better way than they could on TQCSI trading. So it's a wonderful website for them, and the bottom line is they're getting this for free. So I think it's a terrific advantage that we have at the moment. Jazzans are not going to invite CVs they don't particularly think can do the right thing all the time, so it won't be everyone. Sure, it'll be most of the bigger ones that we compete against, but at the moment we're the only ones up there, and so it's not a bad tool for us. Any questions on TQCSI trading and quality trade?
Seems all good, Craig.
Okay. Want to move on then to Jazzan's audits. We have our recertification audit coming up in, I think it's May. We've obviously had our audits every 9 months in previously. There was a few things that were brought up for health surveillance, and I've emailed the health auditors with information relevant to that. So Marley, you would have got those emails from me about what we have to do for health, have you not? She got it, Stuart? Stuart, do you know if Marley's got that?
I'm not sure. I'm waiting for a response from Marley.
All right, we'll keep going till we got that.
Yeah.
One of the things we've identified is with triennial audits, our audit reports. Our auditors are quite good at saying what's changed over the last 3 years, i.e. the certification period, but don't forget please to comment there how the system has coped with those changes. That's the important part. So you're saying what significant changes to the system have happened. You need to have that throwaway line in there that the system has coped with those changes, or if it hasn't, obviously explain it why. In general, our audit reports are pretty, Jazan's are finding our audit reports pretty positive. We've actually closed out most of the audit findings that we've had over the last few years. As you would know, we've reviewed Work Instruction 29, and there's annexes for Work Instruction 29 relevant to each standard, and so they seem to be a little bit more orderly for people to use now. The problem with the audit report where we had the shading, where we had the F1 advice was it was limited in the number of characters. So for the audit summary, we just refer now, in the audit summary, we just refer to the Work Instruction 29. Has anyone had any issues with the new Work Instruction 29 and the audit report?
No.
No.
Okay, if you can just mute your mic whilst you're not talking, just to stop that feedback. Okay, if there's no questions, I'll just go on. Stuart, can you hear me?
Yes, Craig.
Okay, I'll move on. Auditors' performance and consistency. Now this is where we have been using competencies in NUTS to identify areas where we'd like auditors to work on. In general terms, most auditors have accepted that practice. We used to email out on a monthly basis your competencies, but what we've done now is we have in the website, and Stuart, if you can bring it up now, we have in the website your own personal competencies, and so you can go in at any time. But what we've found in the last few months is that without the monthly email alert, auditors haven't been checking them, and so we've seen many months for some auditors where they haven't looked at them and aren't getting that those bits of advice for improvement. So Stuart, if you can just take us through how they go into it.
So guys, obviously when you look at the website, I'll just take us back a step. Down the bottom, auditors login area. Obviously we put in our username and password, and I'll use Craig as a demonstration. So obviously you'll see our members area here. We have vlogs by Craig already there for you. We have our documents. with our strategic plan, our manuals. We have accreditation information, obviously TQCSI information as well with regards to our conference. This is all the new changes that we've made with regards to our ISO codes and standards. So a number of people asked for this to assist them during audits. So now that we've actually got all our auditors listed and all the standards they're actually applicable to. So from now on, when you're listed in an audit team, you'll be able to see what standards everyone actually has to their name. So obviously this initial is going to apply to the next page, but you can see everyone's name and initial there. When we click on codes, we can also see now what codes those people are applicable to. So CB is obviously Craig Bates and David Bunks, Lorraine Welsh. So everybody's name's there, and we've got all the pages lined up for you. So you can skip through and have a look at all the different people. So they're all the codes that we've got listed as NACE codes, all the way down through to, we go to the last page, it should cover the S codes for us. So they're all our food codes and our S codes. So we haven't missed anything, and green obviously means that you're provided with that code. As an auditor, this is where we've got client briefing notes. So we can actually select by client or the registration number of the client, and then add in briefing notes, which will be added to the client details and to NUTS automatically. And this is information on a client that can be shared from auditor to auditor for anything that is need to be known. We have our auditor competencies. So this is where Craig's obviously been signed off. He's had his auditor contract, his auditor induction, and this is when it was all done and relates to. This is audit report numbers for an audit report that was reviewed. So is everyone familiar with these?
Just explain that if there's a report number in the training required, then they then go to the next bit.
Yep. So from there, guys, if it's marked as an audit you need, it then goes to Auditor Notes, and this comes up under your competencies and information required. So competencies we need you to respond to. Once you've responded back to Laura will mark that with an asterisk, and then we'll look at your next audit report to ensure that that area has been completed and amended. General notes is just for general information to help with improvement. And once again, this is all to be positively taken and to actually improve our audit reports and our processes. We've also got our upcoming audit schedule. So these are all your audits now, all the way through for 12 months' time. And obviously your audit history is all there as well. So, and this dates back to 2012, I believe, for when NUT started, 11. So that's the members area. Any questions on the members area, guys?
Yeah, I'll just say a couple. One thing, the client briefing notes. Just go back into that, mate. Just bring up action workforce. Now, there's two uses for this. One is, of course, you can put anything you like in here. So if you want to put in here about use the back door on a Wednesday afternoon, or park 2 weeks away, or wherever it is, whatever issues you want to write in here to remind your next audit, you can put them in these briefing notes. They go straight into NUTS automatically, and then they'll come out in the client details report that you can download from the website here. It won't come into the client's briefing, client's detail reports that the client gets, so it's secure in that respect. So that's one use for it, and the other one, of course, as Stuart said, was we can use it for audit teams. So in the case of Action Workforce here, I put the little audit plan down for Action Workforce, and so the 6 or 7 or 8 guys that's involved in the Action Workforce audit, I'll put instructions down here that I want them to know for that audit, which will be complemented by the audit plan. And it works really well too, because then you can leave it there, so next time you don't really have to reinvent the wheel. So it's a nice little facility we have in your members area of the website. Any questions?
So Craig, Jeff Richards, just one thing I think for me from the competency area is by getting the Excel spreadsheet, I was able to refer back in that and look at historical feedback that I've got. Where on the website, they tend to sort of, once they're rectified, they disappear. So you can't get any of that historical sort of feedback.
I don't think you could have got historical feedback the other way. Once the it's always been the case that once the issue's been addressed, we delete the delete the data out of that field in Auditor Notes.
No, but I think because they come out in the emails, you always had your email file sort of there, so you could always look back over those, when you replied to it and say, yep. With those where you sort of can't look back in the past.
Okay.
Now in the website version. Oh, just to refresh, like say, it's been a few months since I've done an audit this year, so to look back over that historical stuff, it's always good just to refresh your memory on those sort of things.
Okay. Okay, well, we don't have that facility now. I guess the only thing you can do is, if you wanted to, was to print these out and keep them. But I guess most guys would use this facility that once they've been told they're competent in a particular thing, then they don't need to re-look at that unless something goes awry again. But in any case, we can't have a historical thing here.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Everyone else seems happy, Craig?
Okay, I'm just reading Lorraine's points that came up when she presented. Another issue in audit reports to be careful of, guys, is that often you see in, what's that section, system specific, and you see in those sorts of pages of the report, you'll say there's no issues and there's no threat to the quality management system or certification, and yet NCRs have been raised. Clearly, if an NCR has been raised, then it is then certification is in some jeopardy, and you should make note of that in the report. You don't have to kick them in the guts again, but you need to refer to the fact that a non-conformance has been raised, I think. All right. Now, value adding. From a company perspective, one of the reasons we've spent money in TQCSI trading over the years and the client details report through the website and all those sorts of things is that we're trying to value add to our clients their certification so that they stay with us instead of hopping the fence and go to someone who might be cheaper. We don't lose a lot of clients to other CVs, but we lose the occasional one. Sometimes it's personality driven. And in fact, earlier this year we lost a very big client, and it turns out, despite we were pretty proactive as far as getting feedback from the client and so forth, but it turns out that the client really left us because they were disappointed with the auditor. Now, if we had knowledge beforehand, we would have changed him. So I think in all these cases there's always a bit of, he said, she said, and all that sort of stuff. But the bottom line is that the auditor had become complacent and a bit slack, and they weren't really getting value out of the audit. And I can understand this because if you're auditing the same client for years and years and years, I can understand how it would become a little, obviously less formal, but also you might, your eyes might not pick up something that a fresh auditor would. So it just reminds us, it's just a reminder to us that we mustn't become complacent. We don't particularly want to rotate audits, like after 3 years it has to be a new auditor. We don't like doing that. It takes money off you guys individually, but also it's a logistic problem that we have, you know, with codes, wrapping up codes and all that sort of stuff. But obviously, we don't want our reputation tarnished, and obviously we want to service our clients properly. So we do have a system of trying to get the real McCoy out of the clients as far as how they perceive our auditors are going. And of course, if there's any feedback, we'd give it to you. But just be aware that complacency can slip in with your auditing. It hasn't happened in very many cases that I know of, but in one particular case we lost a large client because of it. So the evaluating from the company's perspective is why we offer those extra services and stuff. The other thing is evaluating in auditing. Now, as some of you who are a bit, you know, more than a few years into this game will remember, in years gone by, it was you were either auditing or not. You're not consulting, you're not advising. Auditors can't advise, and it was heresy to advise in an audit and so forth. There's clear direction now from Dr. Galloway, who's the CEO of JASANS, and indeed from within ISO circles itself, that we must value add to our clients. That doesn't mean you tell them how to do something. And we say we go through this a lot in our courses, but you mustn't advise clients, and we all know that. But you must give them some direction. And the way I do that, I mean, I'm not the world's best auditor by long street, but the way I do that's through observation. So I might say, you know, the client might consider reviewing its process of this particular thing. We can't tell a client how to do something. That would, for a start, that would be making you liable from a professional point of view if they did it and it didn't work. Secondly, I think it's the height of arrogance, because we've learnt that information from other companies who have done it the right way, and so why are we, where's the intellectual knowledge stand? But we can advise them, say there's a better way to do that, or we've seen it done better ways, etc. It's a tricky thing, I know, to explain and to actually provide, but there's I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a growing acceptance that we need to add value to our audits, because the clients will always know what you want to do, what you want to see from us for this particular situation, and we need to give them some direction in our audit reports and stuff. I counter that by saying be careful about the professional indemnity, etc., etc. It's getting close now to auditors being sued. In fact, you all may remember in the last 6 months there was that case in America where they've just been audited and so forth, and then a few days later there was a huge, I think it was salmonella outbreak in rock melons over there, and it boiled down to the fact that they were using a machine, essentially as a manual handling machine, to size or to handle the product, which was actually developed for another type of vegetable, and therefore that actually was the genesis of all what generated the problem for this salmonella to hit the streets. Now, I don't know if an auditor would have found that anyway, would have realised that anyway, but in this case the auditor didn't, and he was sued. So was the company, big money too. And the courts got them. I don't say this is any type of threat or anything. It's just a matter of being aware of what's happening in your industry. There hasn't been a suit yet in Australia. I think it will happen, but I think the certification body will be the ones to go rather than the auditors here, because of the way that Australia works versus America. But just bear it in mind. Any questions on that?
No.
No, I don't think so, Craig.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to bring up was leading complicated audits. There's no course for this, and it's not part of the lead auditor course, and it is actually, if you have an audit with different locations, with different auditors that you might not see, all part of the audit team, it is a more complicated affair. And you know, we always thought, well, you know, it just means you've got to think about it a bit more, but it's actually there is a bit of effort in it, in the audit planning, in managing the audit, in writing the audit report particularly, so that it's a seamless audit report, not just sections stuck in, and there might be a section about internal audits for 3 of the 4 sites visited, so that makes it, or didn't they do internal audits at the other site, that sort of thing. So it's actually a fair bit of work to understand these, how to run a complicated audit. And also then you have the case where you shouldn't be auditing stuff that's done at head office. So you know, and that's why we say, for instance, in that Action Workforce client that we have, that the lead audit team leader reviews documentation at head office, and that way the audits on sites don't need to do that, and they might not need to do management review and a few other things. So that should be clear up front so everyone knows. And then, because the clients, nothing makes a compliant more angry is when auditors are reviewing the same stuff at different sites, which could have all been done once. And so, and we've had a couple of occasions in Australia recently. By the way, there's none of these overseas. We've got 6,000 clients overseas, and they don't have these sorts of issues, these audits at all. But we do here, where we might have 10 or 15 branches, etc. But there's been a couple of audits this year where we have gone astray. There's been issues between auditors and so forth, and we've recognised that, and we're developing some instructions and guidance, and that's what I want to get to with this senior lead auditor benchmarking. I want a senior lead auditor to be able to handle these more complicated audits, so that we can call on them at any time we want to. Any questions or comments about that?
No.
None from me, Craig.
Okay. Now, you know that we in TQCSI believe that there should only be one scope for a client, one scope of certification for a client. So if they do quality or environmental or OHS or whatever, the scope of the certification is the activities they do, and then it can be applied to a quality management system or environmental management system, etc. And that's the way we stand. However, there's a complication now with food safety management systems, particularly with the FSSC 22000, but also with ISO 22000 to a certain extent, in that FSSC 22000 requires a significantly more detailed scope of certification. And so that's why you'll see on the audit report now that that the client may have 2. So say a client is certified, say the Shangri-La Hotel in Japan, for instance, is certified against 9001, 14001 and 22000. So it'll have for those clients who just only don't, those clients that have activities other than just food, then they'll have a scope of certification for their main one, 9001, 14001, and there'll be a separate one for food. This all came up as a result of a complaint in Egypt, where I think something like the company makes widgets. Actually, it was a hospital produce food, and complaint was, well, how can a hospital, how can you have 22,000 certification for looking after patients? So that's why we have those 2. Now, it's not a big deal because I think there's only a handful of clients in Australia who have multiple certifications, and they don't, with multiple activities. If they have multiple certifications, but they're only a food company, for instance, they manufacture banana peel, and 9001, 14000, 22000 all applies to that, then there's no drama. but it's where they also make widgets or whatever, and that's where the complication is, and that's why you'll see that change in the audit report, that difference, that extra field in there for the scope of certification. There's well, it's not new now, ISO 17021, well it is new, last year, 15. ISO 17021 Part 1 has replaced those ISO 17021. So ISO 17021 Part 1 is the Bible for TQCSI, if you like. It's our rules, and we're transitioning to that now. There's not a big change for us from the previous version of ISO 17021. There are for some other CBs, it's just we don't have too many issues. But you'll all know that every standard that comes out now typically will have a 17021 part. So I can't remember the parts offhand, but for instance, Part 5 might be quality management systems, Part 2 might be environmental management systems. So up until a few years ago, the rules for an auditor were based on 17021, so it said basically you had to have some sort of tertiary studies and industry experience, and that all could be wrapped up with experience, and tertiary studies could be wrapped up with experience over a fairly long time, etc. But then in 2005, when ISO 22000 came along, the food whackers in Europe decided they were special and they needed extra stuff for their auditors, so they brought out 22003. Subsequent to that, environmental brought out that 17021 part. Now every standard has it. Quality's just been released. And so if they're going to write a standard, so 17021 Part 2 is not a part of 17021, it's actual standard but sits by itself. If they're going to write that, they've got to put words into it. If they're going to put words into it, they're going to end up making it a bureaucratic nightmare. And this is where the competencies all come in. And we have to prove the competencies for the various standards for the different auditors. And it's a hell of a big job. And that's why we ask you guys for information. It's not such a big deal in Australia, but overseas, where some certification bodies don't play the game properly, and this is a new thing, it causes angst. But just be aware that those 17021 parts will relate to an auditor status, to auditor's competency requirements. Okay. A couple of other things. There's a checklist that's been created for quality and environmental now, a combined one. You'll know that ISO 45001 is in the pipe. There's actually a draft international standard out now for countries voting. I'm actually going to sit in a couple of weeks' time to vote on it. There's a big issue in Australia because some people believe that it contradicts the WHS harmonisation laws, so there's some few challenges to come from it yet. ISO are very strong for it to be published before the end of the year, and I hope it does, because it'll make get away with this silly thing about AS 4801 and 18001, etc. Of course, Standards Australia can't keep up, so ISO 9001 and 14001 was approved in September last year, as you know, and Standards Australia didn't approve 9001 until this year. So it's AS NZS ISO 9001:2016 or ISO 9001:2015. And for that reason, we won't be using AS NZS, won't be referring to AS NZS on our certificates anymore, because it will just confuse our clients anymore, ever after. And I don't think they've actually released the AS NZS 14001 yet at all, even though I know the committee voted on it in November last year. So there's some issues that are happening. Okay, now I just want to run through a couple of the action items that came out of the meeting that we had a couple of months ago. One thing that was brought up, sorry, is everyone still with me? You there, Stuart?
Yep, still here, Craig.
Thank you for staying awake. Okay. One thing that was brought up was that auditors were looking for a forum or a chat board to share examples, ask questions, discuss stuff. Like a chat board just for us. Now there are various, and it's a good idea. So someone might be auditing 9001, 2015, and this issue's come up about organisational knowledge, for instance, and they might, you know, when they go home that night, it's a multiple day audit, they might put on the chat board and get some advice or whatever. We're going to do this. There are various mediums out there. We're just deciding on the right one now, and there will be a chat board there for in the future, which will be accessible through mobile devices and phones and stuff like that. It also came up about PPE requirements, and about you know, how do they know what the PPE requirements are. Of course, when we send an audit plan or a notification to a client, we also always ask, are there any PPE requirements? And no one ever says anything to us. And then you might turn up to an audit and you're embarrassed because they expected you to wear heavy boots or something. So that's something you could use the client details report for, and your notes, auditor notes in through the website. So next time, you know, remember to wear your steel cap boots, etc. There was a couple of suggestions for these auditor training sessions, and we will process those. I think the next one, Stuart, you probably won't be able to find out straight away, but I think the next one is where we're going to try and talk about audit reports and complicated audits, but just stay tuned for that. Track preview. Oh, okay. Just a couple of other things. Listen, I know it says it in the audit plans, and head office have to, we have to review the audit plan templates, I know, but you shouldn't be planning to audit document control. That's part of the whole process. It's a bit like preventive actions being taken out of 9001 now. Document control isn't something you should sit down and look at for this 20 minutes. It's something that you would see as you're going through the audit. So try not to put document control into your audit plans. Oh, the other big thing that's happened in the last couple of months, of course, is we've changed the rules about major and minor non-conformances for internal audits and management review. What we were having was a couple of silly instances where our rule was every 12 months, and an auditor would go to an audit and they were planning to do, or they did the internal audit 13-month intervals, and they got a non-conformance for it or whatever. So that's why we've changed the rules for non-conformance, sorry, for internal audits and management review. So the philosophy, not philosophy, but the principle is that they should try and undertake these things on a 12-monthly basis, but it's based on risk, and there are, you know, you can give and take a little bit as long as they're doing it within the rules we've now set, which is in the rules of certification. If it's not, it will be soon, but certainly is in the TQCSI, sorry, the ISO systems policies documents on the website. Does anyone want me to run through those? Is there any confusion about the rules for internal audits and management review now? Okay. One other thing we got picked up for at our Jazz Hands audit was the business about the auditor or the audit team leader not signing off on corrective action from a non-conformance. This is one of the things that makes us different to others, in that you often will, this process of going back to you to get your approval on a corrective action for a non-conformance can take quite a long time, what with you being busy at an audit or whatever. And so what we've done over the years is we've let Stuart approve the corrective action, and if he has any issues, then he will go to either any one of the CAP or Laura or myself, who's available at that day. But if it's contentious, then we would then revert to the audit team leader, and Stuart's done that a few times. I don't want to bureaucratise the process, but what we're asking, I think Stuart said. Stuart, can you just explain what you've done now to set up so that we get their signature or their approval through the email?
Yep. So basically, guys, we'll forward an email saying that I've read through it and believe it is suitable, and we'll just ask you to respond to that email, and that email will come from Tammy that you agree. But look, as we have in the past, if there are any major issues or I do have problems, I will ask you to read it more thoroughly, just to give us that response or formal response. Is everyone happy with that?
Yep.
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 Excellent. Thanks, guys.
I think that's the major issues that we went through. Are there any issues that anyone wants us to talk about before we say goodnight? Stuart, can you just go around the table?
Yep. Anwar?
No, I'm fine.
No, you're all right. Deanne? All good. Excellent. Dilsad? Nothing from Dilsad. Dora? All good. Genevieve? All good. Jeff? Jeff?
All good, thanks.
All good. Excellent. Janine?
All good.
Excellent. Christy? Anything to add? Christy? No? You there, Christy?
Yeah, sorry, I think I had my thing muted. Yeah, that's fine.
Excellent, thanks. Lolita?
Martin?
No. Marley? Nothing from Marley. Martin?
Yeah, all good.
All good. And Nick?
Yeah, all good here as well. Thank you very much for the session.
Thanks, Nick.
And it's also good that we've had royalty on the session with us, Dora, being the Auditor of the Year for TQCSI. So thank you for joining us, Dora. Very well done. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining the little session, and look forward to talking with you in a quarter. Cheers.